thing working? Give me some sound over here.
Yeah.
The Out of Bounds Show is powered by the award-winning golf courses at Dancing Rabbit Golf Club in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Good morning. Welcome in. You can watch the show right now on YouTube. Search Out of Bounds Sports or Facebook. Search the Out of Bounds Show. This is ESPN 105.9 The Zone. And the Out of Bounds Show is driven by your next Ram truck at Mack Hike in Flowood, MackHikeFlowood.com. If you're in the market for a pre-owned truck or SUV. And our guests join us on the Yuengling Lager guest line. We welcome in Ross Dellenger, Sports Illustrated, SI.com. And Ross wrote two outstanding articles this week. One on Mike Leach, the most interesting man alive. Stories about Mike Leach paint his life picture. And then also he followed that up with inside Zach Arnett's abrupt ascension at Mississippi State. And he walks you through how Mike Leach hired Zach Arnett, which is amazing, at a bar on a 3-hour phone call. Ross Dellenger, good morning. How are you?
Good, Bo. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Tell me about the first time you met the Pirate, Mike Leach.
Yeah, he was. It was a couple months into his first year at Mississippi State. He had just got hired a couple months before that, and I visited. It actually was 1 week before the COVID shutdown. It was the first week of March in 2020, and spent 2 days in Starkville. Went out twice on the night with Leach, with him and his staff to the grill, ate and drank and all that stuff. I remember the grill, I think, it was a midweek visit, and the grill closed like at 9:00. Well, all the Mississippi State coaches there, and Leach and me, and we walk in like at 8:30, or something like that, and they stay open. They stayed open for us past 10. I think they closed at 9 or so, and they'd stay open probably till 11 or even later. And then finally, the waitress came over and was like, "You guys got to go. We got to shut down." So I remember walking out. As they said, there was no quick conversation with Mike Leach. If you thought it was going to be 5 minutes, it's going to be 45. If you thought it was going to be 45, it's going to be an hour and a half. And so we're walking out to his car. All the coaches had left. Everybody had left. The restaurant's dark. And we're walking out. And we stood in the parking lot for, I kid you not, probably 45 more minutes, just standing in the parking lot talking. It was constant. He could hit on so many different topics. He had knowledge of so many different issues and topics, and he wanted to talk about them all. And that was my introduction to Mike Leach.
During that 2 days with Mike, what's the one, whether you were in the building, having lunch, dinner, kind of what's the one thing that really jumped out at you, Ross?
Well, it's just that, like, it amazed me how he could talk about so many different things that have nothing to do with each other. He could talk about the history of the Navajo Indians in one sentence, and then switch over to the state of the U.S. economy in another, and talk about them each pretty well, pretty knowledgeable. That's what really stuck out when you were around him, is just his vast array of knowledge on topics.
When who told you about I don't know if it was John Cohen or a staffer or who, but we knew he would take calls during practice, Texas Tech, Washington State, Mississippi State. But who told you the story about Donald Trump calling him during practice and him taking the call during practice?
Yeah, well, several people. So that came from, and I knew that obviously I knew that before this week. I had knowledge that he would take calls from Trump during practice. So that came from several people, but one thing Leach didn't do, and I wrote a little bit about this, is he had a lot of celebrity type friends, kind of like Trump, and he didn't really talk about him a whole lot, and especially didn't talk about his relationship with Trump. I think he kind of knew how divisive Trump was, and he just didn't talk about him very much. He didn't talk about their relationship. So not until after his death did people really want to talk about that on the record, really. And so I was able to get a couple people to talk. One, John Cohen, Eric George, I think, also talked to me a little bit about it. The deputy AD at Mississippi State, and they it's a funny story of all the administrators are at practice and they see Mike step away on a phone call, and then they asked him afterward who it was, and he said, Donald Trump, and they're just kind of like floored. And the thing is and I wrote it in there, but Leach took quite a bit of calls at practice. He would talk to reporters actually at practice. He would take calls from reporters at practice. There's stories of reporters hearing whistles and such in the background. They're like, Coach, what are you doing? And, I'm at practice. And they're like, you don't have to like talk to me and give the interview now. He's like, no, it's okay. I'm okay. Like, let's just keep going. So he wanted to have a conversation and a debate anytime, even if it was right in the middle of practice.
Can you imagine, like just about any other college football coach? You've interviewed 100 of them, if not more. Can you imagine all the other guys taking a phone call, especially from a reporter in practice, and taking 20 minutes or so?
Yeah, no. And I'm asked a lot about who my most interesting coaching interviews are. People always want to know like how a coach is, when you can get them one-on-one or go to dinner with them or whatever. So I always get the question of who the most interesting or who your favorite or who, whatever. And it's always the same answer. There are two that are different, more unique than any other coach I've ever been around. And it's Dana Holgorsen and Mike Leach. And they're on the same tree, actually, and they're very good for them. They were very close friends. In fact, Dana texted me either Sunday or Monday, and he was pretty shook by everything that's happened with Mike because they're very close. But they're very different than any other coach. They're just so unique in their own way. If you met them on the street, you would have no idea that they were a major college head football coach.
Ross Dellenger, SI.com, two great pieces this week, one on Mike Leach and one on Zach Arnett. He joins us on the Yuengling Lager guest line. One of my favorite parts of your article on Leach this week was the fact that he lived in one of the left field lofts right when he got to Mississippi State.
Yeah.
And I knew this because I knew which one he was in, but that he didn't want to move out because he loved walking to the building just like he lived right off campus at Washington State. Talk a little bit about that, Ross.
Yeah, Leach, notorious for walking everywhere. He didn't drive. Dave Emmerich, who was basically his right-hand man for 20 years and actually left Mississippi State for USC, but he was his right-hand man all the way going back to certainly in the Texas Tech days, but even before that, they were together at Kentucky when Leach was an assistant. Dave said in 25 years or so around him, he has only seen him drive one time. It was in 1997. So I don't know the last time that he drove a vehicle. I have no idea. His wife might know, but he just didn't drive. So when he wanted to get somewhere, either a graduate assistant, a support staff member, an administrator at Mississippi State drove him, or he walked. And so Washington State, he lived right off campus, and he walked to work every day, even in the snow, 20 degrees, whatever, he walked to work. At Mississippi State, they put him up, like you said, in the baseball stadium condos there in left field, and he was there for several months and did not want to move out. Him and Sharon could not find a house they liked. I remember visiting, and they just could not find a house they really liked, and he liked the condo so much. And obviously, those condos cost a lot of money. Donors had bought those condos. It's a primo seat for the baseball games, and Mississippi State officials basically had to kick him out. They had to tell him, you've got to go. And I think Sharon, his wife, really probably didn't want to live, in a 900 square foot place permanently. So there was that as well. But it was so close to camp. It was so close to everything. He loved it. He wanted to stay there, and that's typical Leach. He wasn't obsessed with the glamour
Right.
of things. He made $5 million a year. The guy could have had some of the nicest possessions in the world, but he didn't. He didn't care. There's a really quick story. I didn't even write about this story from Brandon Langlois, the associate athletic director and head of communications at Mississippi State, was really close with Mike, and he's had a rough week. But he would drive Mike a lot. He'd pick him up from the house. He would drive him to different events, speaking engagements, press conferences, what you have. And he says one time Mike was on the road and Brandon was going to go meet him somewhere in an event, probably an alumni speaking event. And Mike called him and said, "Hey, I need some Hawaiian shirts." Brandon said, "What? Oh, Hawaiian shirts? Like for what?" And, "Oh, I just, I want to wear some Hawaiian shirts. I got this event." So Brandon went to Walmart and he bought $5, like a basket of $5 Hawaiian shirts, like spent like $25, bought like 5 Hawaiian shirts. Went and gave them to Mike, really cheap shirts, looked pretty cheap, whatever. Gave them to Mike. Mike loved them, fell in love with them. Brandon said still wore them up until the day he died, basically. Still wore these $5 Walmart Hawaiian shirts. This is a man who made $5 million. And it just tells you a lot about Mike and, what he cared about in life.
That's incredible. Ross Dellenger, Sports Illustrated, SI.com, on the Yuengling Lager guest line, celebrating Mike Leach's life and his impact on all of us in college football. Ross, we've been around a lot of coaches. So many of them are so guarded. And he just wanted to chew the fat and have a drink and hang out. And you know that. And I know you've been around so many coaches that don't give you anything, right? Because they're so paranoid and guarded. And Mike Leach was the opposite of that.
He was. It's interesting. He was guarded about one topic, football.
Yeah.
Mike didn't want to talk about football. He wanted to talk about anything else outside of football. He did not want to spend time talking about football. One person, when I was going through all the interviews, one interview, I forgot even who it was. This person was talking about Mike and football and how he thought that Mike never wanted to talk about football because he knew things about football in the game and he didn't want to share them. He didn't want to give away the secrets. And so that he didn't talk about football very much. He talked about anything else. But you do kind of wish that there were coaches out there that would be a little more open and relaxed with you, like Mike was. He was so the way he talked about subjects. He didn't care. You would have never thought he was a major college football coach and a celebrity because he really didn't care what he said in a lot of ways, and sometimes that backfired, of course, especially on Twitter. Right, we've seen that. We saw that backfire a little bit on Twitter with him his first few months on the job at Mississippi State. But that was one of the great things about him, is that he was a coach and a celebrity who just didn't think of himself like that, and so didn't really care what he said, and would talk to you about virtually anything except football. And I remember trying to, I was in his office in first week of October. I visited there, so about 2 months ago or so, and we were in his office talking about Will Rogers and the quarterback, and I was trying to get him to tell me about Will and the Heisman Trophy and him not being in consideration, and he did talk about it a little bit. And then I went to about, hey, how is he in your offense, and tell me about your offense, how it fits him. And there was just nothing. Like he did not want to talk about it. He wanted to switch gears and wanted to talk about NIL in the state of college athletics and name, image, and likeness stuff in Congress and NIL bill, and that's who he was.
Did you hear Ross Dellenger, Sports Illustrated, on the Out of Bounds show? Did you hear the story about him meeting Charles Barkley at a party and Charles Barkley picking him up?
Yeah, I saw that last night. Dave Emmerich, his former kind of chief of staff, tweeted that story out last night or yesterday. I saw it last night. I texted Dave, who I interviewed for my story earlier this week, and I said, Dave, you kept that story from me, man. That would have been great in my list of stories. That would have been fantastic. And Dave said, dude, there's so many stories that they just they're going to randomly come back to me, and probably for months now. He'll probably will remember these stories that just randomly pop into his head. But that story is great, isn't it? Like he went to some event. Charles Barkley was there. Later on, Dave asked him, yeah, how was the event? Well, I met Charles Barkley. He picked me up. And Dave said, well, where were you at? He picked you up in his car? And Mike said, no, he picked me up physically and carried me around the party.
Unbelievable. Ross Dellenger on the Out of Bounds show. So can you imagine, you did a hell of a piece on Zach Arnett and how Mike Leach hired him at a bar in DeSoto County on the phone. And Arnett had just been hired by Syracuse, so it was kind of a quick turnaround there, and maybe a big recruiting lobbying effort from Mike Leach, Fox and Hound Bar and Grill in North Mississippi. But kind of segueing a little bit, Mike's coming off winning 7 games in 8 games. He had to rebuild the thing. Moorhead had driven the program into the ground, and Mike's won a pretty nice amount of games the last 2 years. Can you imagine being 36 years old or 37 and having to even attempt to fill Leach's shoes, Ross, with Zach Arnett?
Yeah, it's those are dudes, at least from an off-the-field perspective, that no one could fill. But it's a tall task for Zach, and he's obviously, Zach is incredibly young, right? He's 36 years old. He just got to major college level at Mississippi State for forever. He was a assistant at New Mexico and San Diego State. This is a wide world he's stepping in. He's the youngest coach in the SEC by 3 years. He may be the second. I don't know this completely yet. I'm working with the SEC office on it, but he's the second youngest coach, we think, in SEC football history. And Mike Archer from LSU was the youngest, I think, at 34, 35. But he's really young, and it's going to be interesting to see. He's got a lot of respect there from a lot of people around the university and from a lot of players. And let's just cut through the BS. Like, they partly hired him because this timing, this bad timing, right? Like you got the transfer portal that's buzzing, and players of Mississippi State's team are getting offers, probably NIL, big NIL offers to leave now if they don't have a coach or didn't at the time. You got that going. You got signing day. You're trying to hold together a class next week. You're right in the middle of bowl prep. So, but partly because of timing, he got the job, but also partly because he does have a lot of respect there in the players really like him. I'll give you a little snippet here that I really haven't written about, but Mike was sick during the season. I don't think people understand really how sick he was, but he had very serious pneumonia type symptoms. I don't know if it was specifically pneumonia, but it was certainly symptoms you would classify with kind of pneumonia, like just bad, awful cough and fatigue and all that. And it got to the point where I think some of the players were like, "Oh man, coach is really sick," and they went to some folks high up and said, "Look, if coach can't go anymore, I just want you to know, we're behind Zach. We like Zach. He's our guy," kind of thing. So he really had the support of the players, including not just defensive players but offensive players, and specifically, the quarterback, Will Rogers. I think likes Zach a lot, and that was big in all this. And then let's not look past Zach's units. I mean, they've been really, really good. I think his first year they were ranked 50th. The last 2 years they were in the top 30, 35 or so in defensive statistics. So they've been really good.
Well, you did a great job, man, on both your articles this week, and we appreciate you spending some time with us. And we'll catch up again soon. We appreciate it, Ross Dellenger. Thanks, man.
Sounds good, Bo. Thanks.
Ross Dellenger, SI.com, 2 articles this week, both on Mike Leach, but one with some wonderful Mike Leach stories, and then the other one on how Mike Leach hired Zach Arnett. If you're a Hail State fan, a college football fan, you want to go to SI.com, pull up both. They're fantastic. Ross Dellenger on the Yuengling Lager guest line, spent a couple of days with Mike Leach a week or so before COVID shut everything down, which was about a month into Leach's tenure. About a month and a half into Leach's tenure at Mississippi State. Blake?
Isn't it interesting that Mississippi State has 2 monumental sports instances that originate in a bar? Their baseball stadium was designed in a bar, and their new head football coach was hired in a bar. Just going to throw that out there. They're both factual statements. You do with that what you will. I'm just saying they're factual statements.
Yeah. Those people. So the baseball.
The original baseball stadium was designed.
The original.
No. I'm saying the original thought for the new stadium.
Got it.
Was designed in that bar in Omaha. They sat in the bar and they sketched out an idea for a new cathedral of the stadium. Obviously, they designed it in an architecture studio. I understand that.
Sure.
But the thought, the original idea of we need to rebuild it.
I'll have to ask.
Yeah, that
Michael
story's been
Berner
told.
And
yeah.
them. Okay.
It's what is it? Something Parrot? The something Parrot bar or something in Omaha? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and now Mike Leach. I mean, you heard Charlie Winfield. Mike Leach was essentially hired at a bar.
Yeah, they went
his
from
poolside bar.
bicycle shop to Leach's house, and probably
now
hit that.
Arnett was hired at a bar.
That's incredible. And Mike was on the phone with Zach Arnett for 3 hours at the Fox and they just made the Fox and Hound famous.
I'm just saying.
We may have to go take a road trip to DeSoto County in South Haven. The Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone ESPN, brought to you by Juniker Jewelry Store. Guys, if you're looking for those that pair of earrings, the engagement ring, necklace, you name it, bracelet, all at Juniker Jewelry Store in Madison on Highland Colony. We appreciate Ross Dellenger stopping by and hanging out with us today.